I have a problem with pet tubers who act like they're holier than thou, think they know more than anyone else solely based on their age, and can't take criticism. Yeah, this video is going to be about Brian Barczyk.
I always say if you saw this in the wild, you'd probably think, ow, he got me.
Brian is potentially the biggest pet tuber on YouTube with over 2 million subscribers and a shit ton of animals. I'm not even sure he knows how many animals he has. But I think we can be pretty sure if we say 20,000, we're lowballing it. Then again, to be fair, he is a breeder and he does have staff, so it's not like, you know, the whole hoarding thing. But then he says things like this.
We definitely have a lot of animals, but not as many animals as we used to, and not too many that we can't take care of. That's a big thing for me.
Pretty innocent, right? But now take a look at these pictures. The first one is from about a year ago, and the second one is about a month old. It's the same snake. Now notice in the first picture, the bubbles around the mouth. Normally, in a snake, this would be a very clear sign of a respiratory infection. This usually happens due to inadequate care, but Brian claims it was just water bubbles, nothing fancy, she had just been drinking water. Now, as far as I'm aware, nobody really has seen that except for him, but, you know, I will give him the benefit of the doubt. Right until you see the second picture, which is actually a thumbnail from a video with the same snake. And when you look at the mouth, now it looks a bit different now, doesn't it? That looks like what is called mouth rot, which is basically a respiratory infection that has not been treated. If he cared, why did this happen? Is it because Brian is negligent but refused to take criticism and therefore does not improve? I do think he cares. Mostly about having an audience and fans that will then, you know, stroke the ego. And now, of course, we're going to go through several instances of how Brian takes care of his animals, what he does, what he claims he does. All of these, you know, regular things we always do. But I would like to point out, due to Brian having been on the platform for quite a while and uploads daily, I am only going to go back about 12 months. Because I will give the benefit of the doubt for older stuff. If he did some stuff and improve, I should not hold that against him. I'm only going to discuss the last 6 months, as I would say that's so recent, and in some cases I compare today with back then. So let's just jump right in. Now the first one we're going to point out is that he claims to quarantine his animals, which I would rate extremely important for a business of this size, as any disease can spread like a wildfire when you have this many animals. So quarantining your animals is extremely important. Yet, in spite of his claim, we have several instances of him unboxing brand new animals that came from the outside inside the reptile rooms. That is not quarantining your animals, but we can top it off with this video.
Thank you, Andy. I don't know what it is. I'm either going to be real happy or really mad at you. Not 100% sure. As well, I'm not going to read that because I want to be surprised. These things are freaking awesome.
These things?
Oh,
whoa!
Oh my gosh!
What is that?
Whoa,
It's
come
like
on.
First of all, see, we can now confirm he unboxed a brand new animal inside, you know, the back room where he keeps the animals. That is not quarantine. Then he proceeds to take it straight into the reptarium.
Let's go ahead and see the cage that you guys have picked out and get this thing set up. This is what you guys came up with, huh?
Which is neither a quarantined area. At no point was this animal in a quarantine. If you claim you quarantine your animals, fucking do it. That's all. Just fucking do it. Now with that done, let's jump into the enclosures. How does he actually provide for these animals? Well, we can start with this one. This is a white-lipped python. It's in the reptarium where, as far as I can tell, that's where he takes the best care of his animals. It's a semi-arboreal species as far as I know, which means it does go up, it also goes along the ground. But right here, we can all see there is no room for this snake. I would seriously doubt that, without knowing too much, that enclosure is big enough. And how about this footage of a Colombian Rainbow Boa?
Just downstairs and seeing this, which does not look too promising, but maybe it won't be that bad. Of course, this is a Colombian Rainbow Boa.
Now, I happen to know a few things about rainbow boas. First of all, they are semi-arboreal. There is no space for this one to climb. At least it has more space outwards. But look at the substrate again.
Again, lots of infertile ova. Oh my gosh. Let's see if there's any good baby.
That is extremely dry. This is a species that requires humidity between 75% and 90%. There is no way that that enclosure has a humidity at that height. Then what about his leopard geckos? He also produces a lot of those. Here's a picture of him keeping 4 adult leopard geckos in an enclosure where... Yet, Brian claims he provides the best care and he loves his animals. He has 4 leopard geckos in this box. There's virtually no space in it. Normally, you would only keep a single leopard gecko. You wouldn't stick them together due to risk of injuries. Yet he has 4. I could understand a breeder sticking a pair together, but 4, and with such a little amount of space, I wouldn't even have 1 gecko in that. Yet Brian claims he loves his animals and he provides the best care. I would like to understand how that is the best though. Now he has a video series about setting up terrariums or tubs, whatever you want to call it, on the cheap. Basically, how cheaply can you set up like a ball python enclosure or a leopard gecko setup. Now, I know more about leopard geckos than I know about ball pythons, so I'm gonna mainly focus on that one, but let's just have a look at it here.
You have it, people. I mean, it is that simple. A leopard gecko setup that is fine for under about $70. Oh, and
before we start, let's just consider, why is he making this kind of video? Is it because he wants you to set up a cheap enclosure? Is it because he wants you to save money? Or is it because he sells leopard geckos, so the more people he can convince how cheaply you can have one, the more geckos he can sell, because this is going out straight to his fans, who, as far as I'm aware, are quite diehard.
People are always asking me, Brian, how do I set up a leopard gecko? Now let me just start by saying that this setup isn't the only way. I'm going to try to do kind of the most inexpensive way, maybe even a temporary thing until you get a bigger terrarium.
So we're about 40 seconds in, and Brian basically admits he's setting up the cheapest possible setup he can. Not necessarily even a permanent solution, just the cheapest solution. Not the best solution, the cheapest solution. This is probably going to lead to some interesting points.
This is a bold bell. They are absolutely incredible and one of my favorite mutations of all the leopard geckos. And by the way, leopard geckos can have hundreds and hundreds of different mutations and paint jobs.
Again, a few seconds later, we're in now. He is selling you a gecko. And he follows this up by showing a bunch of very pretty geckos. This is basically an ad for his geckos, which basically helps reinforce my idea of this being an ad more than being about proper care.
But let's go ahead and get into what geckos need, and I'm going to basically be doing a little bit of a minimalistic type setup for you guys.
So now he admits it's a minimalistic setup, which again indicates this is not about the proper care of the animal, but how to keep your animal alive, which really isn't the way to do it.
Dish here that we will put our mealworms, and we want to have a vitamin and calcium supplement.
Okay, he just keeps going, so I'm just going to skip to the build.
And the first thing is this tub here, although it's the perfect size for a leopard gecko, it's going to get along just completely fine.
Okay, so Brian claims this is the perfect size for a leopard gecko. It looks like it's about the length of his torso. And Brian is a bit of a short guy. I've seen pictures of him. He is quite short. So I decided to get some measurement tools to figure out how big that tub is, so we can get an idea of just what is the perfect size. So let's take my torso. That should be a pretty perfect fit. I'm about this much taller than Brian, so that's here. That's about, let's say, here. So this is the length that Brian believes is about a perfect size. Again, this is the length. Now, the recommended size, remember, this is the length. Recommended is this long. So he's about a third off of what is the recommended size. But so the perfect size is 1/3 smaller than the recommended size. I'm calling bullshit.
Okay, so now we have the under tank heater from ZoomEd. And like I mentioned, in a perfect world, I would actually rather have some kind of a heat element that is on a thermostat where you can actually control it. It would be a much safer route in all things. But the truth is that, you know, the ZoomEd under the tank heater does actually get some pretty good ratings. But this is going to stay about 90 to 92 degrees.
Oh God. No, it won't. It can break. So he is intentionally advising people not to use a thermostat because, you know, it's better with, but you can go without. No, you fucking can't. That is the single most important thing you have to buy. Because not only does it prevent a fire hazard, it prevents damage to your animals. I mean, have a look at these animals. Welcome to some animals that got burned because you didn't have a fucking thermostat. It's a death trap, that's what it is.
Let's talk about bedding. I think sand is the devil when it comes to reptiles.
I'll give him that. That can cause impaction if you do not provide proper care to your animals.
Let's talk about food. Leopard geckos are actually insectivores, right? So they will eat all kinds of different insects. But really the thing I love about leopard geckos is the fact that you can really sustain them on a mealworm diet. These guys are really easy to feed.
He's right, they can survive on mealworms. The key word in that sentence is survive, because that won't be a healthy diet. As with any animal, or human for that matter, variety is the key. If you only eat one thing, your body doesn't get all the nutrients it requires. It's the same basic principle. I'm assuming he went for the mealworms based on the simple fact that they're probably the cheapest option.
So you have your fresh water, now you have your food with vitamin and calcium supplement, have your hide spot, you have your heat over here, cool side over here, air ventilation. I tell you what guys, that seems like that's about all you need.
No Brian, it's not. At a minimum, you need one more hide on the cold side, preferably two, as you also want a humid hide for it to basically act as a shed box to provide good sheds. So you need 3 hides. Not 1, 3. There's not room for that in that one. And now you know why that enclosure is too small.
And I think this beautiful Max Snow Gecko is going to be super happy in this cage. It's got everything it possibly needs.
Super happy. It has a hide and 2 bowls. That's it. So much, you know, so much enrichment for that animal. What a life. Yeah. Basically, that was anything but a good setup for a leopard gecko. That was a horrible setup. It would keep the gecko alive, but it would not thrive. It would not be a happy animal. And it basically came to what I believed it was, an ad for him to sell more geckos, not a way to provide proper care. And I did see the ball python setup. He does make several mistakes, but the main one is he does the same thing with the heat mat, and that's just such a dumb move. It's such a basic move. It's like he's trapped in the 80s. And again, he does it because he wants to sell ball pythons. He's very big on those. Now with that done, we're gonna move into the ethical side of things with Brian. Because Brian is an avid defender of the spider ball python. There are also some other morphs he also defends that has this problem. But basically, he defends breeding animals with neurological issues, which is called the spider wobble. It's a wobbly hit, they miss their strikes, they don't know what's up or down, so they lie on their back. It is quite a serious issue for an animal. It seems like they're permanently dizzy. Now, as I said, Brian defends this vehemently. And I believe it's because he is a big breeder of them, and he makes a lot of money selling these snakes. He even himself admits, after 20 years, it has not been possible to breed it out.
I have personally worked for a long time to kind of get as much of the wobble out. Now, it is linked to the gene, so there's no way you're going to separate it. When you produce a spider, there is a neurological glitch called a wobble, and you're never going to totally get rid of it.
You will at some point, if you buy a spider ball python, see this behavior. It can be as a baby or when they grow up. They can be when they're stressed. Sometimes it's serious, sometimes it's not, but it will be there. So that shows you that he is willing to breed on an animal that has a very clear genetic problem. His arguments are, you wouldn't, what if it was a dog? Well, if you breed a dog species with a neurological issues so they wouldn't know what's up or down, yes, I would think the same. You probably shouldn't be breeding that animal. Then there are also the argument that, what about humans? You wouldn't put them down. Nobody's talking about killing the spider ball pythons. We're just saying that since we are the one who's choosing what to breed, we could choose not to. It is not the same with humans, simply because, number one, we don't sell humans. Number two, we do not control it in the same way. Brian makes a very compelling, I think the word here is mistake, because he goes over to the leopard geckos, and there is a morph of leopard geckos that has a similar issue. Brian then goes on and says he does not breed that because there is an alternative that looks almost identical.
And it's just something that we decided, hey, there's other mutations that are very similar to Enigma. We'll just go ahead and work with them, things like white and yellows, that make things that look almost the same, so why produce the Enigma? Again, we decided on our own. We didn't have to.
So what he's saying is he's breeding the spider ball python because it's popular and there is no alternative to that morph. If there were an alternative, he wouldn't do it, which basically kills off one of his arguments. But it also determines that he does it for money. It is not for anything else. And that tells you a lot about the guy. He cares, apparently, a lot about money and fame and not a lot about his animals. This is a man that has gained a ton of fame and a ton of subscribers and fans. Done this so effectively, he has basically become the face of the hobby. At least in America. And that's pretty scary because he obviously tells people to provide subpar care so he can sell them more animals. And on top of that, he quite clearly cares more about what sells than what is ethically the right thing to do. You don't want to intentionally breed an animal you know will have an issue. Why would you do that? There is no point in doing that except money. Because of his huge audience, it is very hard to determine how many animals have died because of his advice, of his videos, because he did not provide proper care himself. Not to mention, how many times does he have, disease outbreaks due to the lack of quarantine he's showing in his videos? How many animals die because of that? It's very hard to tell. I'm gonna end the video on that note. So if you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more. And until then, I'll see you next time.